Welcome and thank you for tuning into our special segment. Our special segment today will be political affairs, where I will be in conversation with Abdirizak Bihi. Abdirizak is a candidate running for City Council seat in Ward 6, and we will be discussing his policy positions regarding his constituents. Stay tuned. Abdirizak, thank you for coming to Oromia11 and sitting down with me, and welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm very glad to be here.
Likewise, thank you. As you've told me, you're running for a city council seat in Ward 6.
Yep.
And per our conversation, you're actually a resident of Ward 6. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, actually, I'm running for Ward 6 City Council, and I'm a resident in Cedar Riverside, part of the beauty of Ward 6. For 22 years, I lived there with my family.
That is a long time.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I like about the neighborhood, and the community in Ward 6 is so diverse, and it feels like home.
It does.
It is home. And I've been working with the community also for the past 24 years. I've been an organizer, community leader, advocate, provider of social services. I bring jobs and trainings to the community. So it's really a beautiful community. It's good to see to grow up with your neighbors. You know, you see little kids that you knew them when they were 2 or 1 year old, now going to college, and you grow up with them, all these kids, and your kids grow up with them. You see people that you help them get into ESL classes, then get the GED, then you help them get into nursing classes, and now moving out to buy a house and become a middle-class family. So it's
that
really
growth process.
It's really a neighborhood and a community where you see the reflection of your work. And it's not easy also to be an organizer. Yeah.
What are some of the obstacles you faced organizing a predominantly immigrant community who aren't that well versed in domestic or local politics?
You know, first of all, there are 2 main barriers for immigrant communities, and especially for our East African communities. Those 2 main barriers are language and cultural barrier. And believe me, language barrier is easy. But cultural barrier of understanding the new home, the new surroundings, how things work. For example, back home in Ethiopia and Somalia, when you get sick, you go to the hospital, you're taken care of. Nobody asks you health care insurance. If there's a clinic in your neighborhood, nobody asks you to fill out a lot of forms. Here, when we were new, it was difficult because every time you go to a doctor or you go to an office, you do a lot of paperwork. Bureaucracy here is high. But it's
That's what Minnesota is known for.
Yes, yes, and it's worth it because the quality of education and the quality of healthcare and the quality of services are high. But one elder one day said, "Everything about America is great, except if you want to shake hand with someone, you have to fill out a form." So cultural barrier is really huge. So those 2 things really are difficult. But one thing I like about the East African community is they seek help. And to seek help, we don't do it like many people do. We don't call the right time. We don't set up an appointment. An elder from Oromo community can knock on your door 3 in the morning because she needs you to do something. And we have a culture of respecting elders and listening to them. So we have access to each other. For example, in the community where I live, if I need injera and I'm running out because it's a fasting time and I can't go to the halal store, I knock on the door of my neighbor. And borrow, get free injera or free banana. Or if they are not home, I remember the days when we used to leave our apartment's doors open. So when our neighbors need a tomato or a banana or a sauce, they just walk into your house without you being there and get whatever they want. And the same thing. Also childcare. If something happens, we rely on each other for rides to work, for help. So that makes easy to really overcome the cultural and language barrier to organize the community. Also, we have a lot of mosques. Most of this community are Muslim. So we have a lot of mosques. The mosques also serve as a community center. So I have a message of a job fair. instead of putting flyers that nobody reads.
Yeah.
I go to the local mosques.
Yeah.
I go to Fiqh Mosque. I go to Rawda, Imam Shafi'i, Al-Hijra, anyone. And I ask the Imam to give me the microphone. And I share, like we just did with the COVID-19.
Yeah.
So we rely on each other and we listen to each other. And that
culture helped you really.
Yes, that really was a big help to overcome the barriers of cultural and language barriers in order to access ESL classes, jobs, trainings, business opportunities, which we are all business men and women. So that interconnection,
that leaning into community,
lenience on each other, that was really a big tool to overcome the cultural and language barrier and many other barriers.
I hear you. Now that you say that, I actually have a childhood memory in those theater buildings.
Yes.
Where, especially funerals, like if someone died,
yes,
then you have a lot of guests coming in. So all the neighbors leave their doors open so people can come in and out, cook in one apartment, and feed people in another apartment.
Yes.
So that you brought back a really
absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, every person who has who is a descendant of East African heritage who lives in Minnesota.
That's
at one point went through of this community in Ward 6, whether it's Phillips, whether it's the Seward, whether it's Cedar Riverside, we have this culture, which we are hoping our second and third generation pass it on.
Yeah. Thank you so much. In our previous conversations, when we were talking about what made you want to run for office and, you know, your political involvement, your journey in local politics, you talked about, you know, lack of investment in the community, lack of access, lack of resources, and issues that you felt needed to be addressed and addressed by someone who understands that community as deeply as you do. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Thank you for asking me such an important question. Actually, having watched many people or helping many people get elected into that seat and seeing the return of that work not even close to enough or anywhere tangible, you wonder, why are we having the continuous issues that neglect our community and we don't do anything and we keep organizing and electing people? So, and having people just moving into the neighborhood to get elected also exasperated and made it worse for us to really find the impact, positive impact we want to do in our community. So yes, I feel that as an organizer, as a person who provides services, as a person who understands what the real needs of the community are on a daily basis, by living with them for a long time and by working with them, and also being as a go-to person of all issues, I said, you know, it's important that I go run for this office, and once I get elected and get there, I'll be different. I'll be different. Number one, I know what the needs are. Number two, I've been addressing them for a long time. And we don't want to elect people and serve other big interests or business interests or corporate interests. We want people serving their neighbors, people who really understand what the community needs. For example, we are a community of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
We love to make business. We really are a community of risk takers. For example, now in our community, you will find thousands of East Africans who operate 18-wheelers, semi-trailers, the big ones, across this continent. And they're all from this community, including women, you know, women from East Africa, you know, driving throughout this country. So the spirit of that business needs investment. For example, the organizations I work with, for example, Emerge Community Development, does free trainings for CDL, and we have done so many trainings free. Before that, people used to travel to other states and spend thousands of dollars to get training. Now, while you are being home in Minneapolis, we have those resources that you get your free CDL training at home, and then have companies fight over you I
to
know
other areas.
eventually the Oromo and Somali and East African community, eventually they don't like to work for someone. They buy their own truck. Before you know, they
After
own
working
15,
for a
20
while,
trucks
yeah.
and they're a boss. So those are the things that I would love to invest. For example, the other thing I see every day by working with people of color organizations like Summit Academy or OIC, Indian OIC, CLUES, all these big organizations from other minorities that are really highly funded, is they have trainings that are free for the community. For example, I put a lot of people in construction trainings. We know people who are doctors in Ethiopia, in Somalia, in Kenya, but cannot work here as a doctor. We know people who drove 18-wheelers, but they cannot work here unless they get certified. We know people who did construction, but they work as $7 or $8 security officer, but their passion is construction. So we help them, we help the community take ESL classes. Second step is GED classes. And as soon as they're done, we get them, we find out about their passion. If they love construction, we put them free classes in construction at Emerge or Summit Academy. If they love nursing or healthcare career, we put them for free. If they love to drive 18-wheeler and they have that nomadic passion and freedom and to make money, we help them get the CADL. So by knowing, by living in the community, by being part of the community, comes with the benefit of knowing what the community needs. And that's really what is driving me after all these years to run for Ward 6.
Thank you so much. So you addressed some of the acute needs the community needs. Let's say you guys are providing free CDL trainings and
Yes.
other trainings for other jobs, job
I
opportunities.
work with organizations that provide.
But how can people access those organizations?
The Emerge Community Development is part of Cedar Riverside Opportunity Center.
Okay.
If you live in Ward 6.
Okay.
It's a huge building right across well-known Brian Coyle Community Center. They are accessible. Right now, you have to set up an appointment because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And Summit Academy in the north side is also available.
Yeah.
Emerge Community Development also is on the north side and provide all career trainings. Indian OIC, we have right here on Franklin Avenue, providing programs. The other thing that we have done in the past through Emerge, and I'm in the future, if I get elected, I want to invest is IT programs.
Okay.
Our community loves gadgets.
Yes.
They love computers. They love intricate work like IT. I'll tell you one story of how it changes people's lives. I had a neighbor who was earning $8.35 or 25 cents an hour by being a security guard, a young man of 25 years age who has a bright future.
Right.
Then one day, Emerge brought down an IT program that went on for 3 months on the weekends. He took that program after I persuaded him. It was too good to be true. Mm-hmm. He did graduated. He works in Fairview right now, and he started his new job with $68,000 a year. That's how he started, the starting
That's
point.
quite a jump.
So there's another dilemma. Mm-hmm. As you know, 2020 now and 2040, Minnesota will run out of skilled labor because the baby boomers are completely retiring. And the baby boomers were the people who were the train drivers, the mechanic, the construction, the electrician, the IT, doctors, nurses. So there's an opportunity for us as a state to not do what we used to do, or what most of American states do. Hire overseas skilled labor. That's wrong. We have unemployment in our East African community that is now between 20 to 27%, the highest in the Midwest. What about instead of spending millions and billions bringing other employees from around the world, skilled labor? What about if invest in a small fraction of that money in our citizens here, of the East African and Latino and people of color and everyone? Invest in our communities in Ward 6 and in Minneapolis and in the state, and let's give them trainings. Right now, there's about 27 to 30 from East African community who drive, including women, who drive our trains, LRT buses. I'm so proud to see them get that opportunity, get the training from the Metro Transit. Almost every bus that passes by you in the city, four of them, one of them is from the East African community. So we need to invest in electrician, in healthcare trainings, in transportation trainings. And right now, the new future jobs are environmental jobs.
Yeah.
Environmental jobs, jobs that will to become a plumber, to change, because right now we are not doing well environmentally.
Yeah.
And we lead the world. So President Biden talked about the future. The future will be green jobs. So we need also to be ahead of our game and be with everyone and to have a voice at the city council that says, okay, the green jobs are coming. We want to be part of it. We want the residents of Ward 6, of all kinds, of all people, those young people, they need to get those trainings at no cost as an investment so they can be our skilled labor, so we don't become short of labor, skilled labor, as we are going to be by 2040.
Yeah, that unemployment rate is daunting. I know Ward 6 is probably one of, if not the most immigrant dense ward in Minneapolis.
Yes.
And you spoke a lot about the disparities that are there and the lack of access and the lack of investment. As we both know, especially in that Riverside area, there are, I don't know the exact numbers, but lots of small businesses, and the entrepreneurial spirit in our community is very high.
Yes.
And as you both know, you probably know more than I do, they were hit very hard with the pandemic that happened right now. How are you, in your policy position, planning to, confront that?
Yes. Small businesses in our community in Ward 6 is very important in terms of creating jobs and wealth for our community and residents. As you know, especially the East African and the Latino community are very entrepreneurial. And a lot of them do not have access to investments or use banks, whether it's religious or whether it's the high rates or whether it's the discrimination.
So lack of access.
Yes, or the discrimination we have seen in the country, or Minnesota, that redline different neighborhoods for investing. Banks don't do well for us. So those communities of color tend to rely on each other, especially in the East African culture, where 10 guys and their wives who work different jobs pool money together, give to one person to open a business or co-own that business as a cooperative. That's how these businesses came. And they are suffering in terms of the pandemic. I know West Bank Business Association, where I live, has done and hired people who speak Oromo and Somali to engage the business to apply for those benefits and reliefs. But we have seen businesses on Seward, on Franklin Avenue. Not only that they were not engaged, and many others or
left
out, and many others also on Lake Street. But also what happened on top of the pandemic to our all small businesses is the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd. First of all, I want to say I am so happy that the killer, the policeman, former police officer of Minneapolis who murdered George Floyd, has been held accountable. I'm not saying George Floyd got justice. I'm saying the officer who killed him has been accountable, and it's a big step toward the future of getting justice for our community. But we're coming back to the businesses. In the aftermath of George Floyd, a lot of businesses were looted, like most of the businesses. But recently, what we have seen is something that's really shocked us. In Seward neighborhood, the Franklin, those diverse businesses, the Oromo-owned businesses, the Somali-owned business, and everybody else, has been looted recently. But what's so starkly different is that at this time, for example, the pharmacy called Lake Pharmacy there was looted 4 times. This time, what's different is a Minneapolis police squad car was sitting right across the street, while it took 45 minutes for these bad people to break the doors because it has been fortified many times, and the police kept
It was
watching.
boarded up and
Yes.
it was still broken into.
It took them 45 minutes. The squad car and the officers were there,
And they watched it happen.
and they watched that. I know a lot of people are talking about other issues, but how can you sit there as a police officer with your squad car while small businesses are being looted? What also we find out at the same time is 35 or $70 million we spent to bring National Guard and other
protect these
law enforcements, mutual law enforcements to the city. We found them protecting affluent neighborhoods, downtown businesses. While here, there was no single soldier. So we organized, I was engaged by the businesses. We went over there with the community leaders. We brought the media. We brought attention to the governor, to the mayor, and to request equal protection. Can you imagine you cannot even be getting equity in protection in these times? So finally, we got the soldiers into the neighborhoods. Luckily, after the court, nothing bad happened. So I am willing to really create culturally appropriate financing or grants or easily no interest bearing grants to invest in our small businesses. That doesn't have the banking financial crunch that really 20,000 pages that allows you to get this money here, but here it gives you conditions that you will never get the money. We want a transparent, simple way of our small businesses to get help, whether it's grants to grow and hire. How do we benefit from that? We benefit every dollar we invest in those small businesses. We get at least $5 or $10 back immediately. How? Imagine how many people working in there. Imagine the dent we are impacting on the high chronic unemployment. So we have a lot of great plans for our small businesses.
Thank you. I think that was a great segue into my next question, which is policing and the conversation that is happening around policing, especially in light of, this obviously precedes George Floyd or anyone before. Throughout the history of the United States, but especially in the light of George Floyd, his murder, us witnessing that on camera, and following that, many other police shootings have happened that have directly impacted, especially the Somali community with Dulal Eid, and others who have not gotten the kind of attention that I think those cases deserve, and also with Dante Wright just being killed recently. The conversation is now between, most politicians or people running for offices are towards police reform.
Yes.
And activists argue that reform is not enough. This is not an institution that can be reformed because it was founded on a really racist system. It is a race policing system. So abolition is the only way. What is your position on these conversations?
First of all, I agree the way the police department was established a long time ago. It has very, very negative roots, long time ago. When the slavery was legal in this country, there was a bunch of hired guns to really find any escaped slave, or whether bring him dead or bring him alive. Actually, the law enforcement system in this country has a lot of roots like that. Many has changed. Many has not changed that much, or, has grown into something else. Minneapolis Police Department has a history of brutality, like many other departments, to everyone, and especially people of color. The gap between people are traffic stopped by police in terms of black people and people of color and the white people is unbelievable. And the gap, the people who were shot for things like starting from traffic stop, like we have seen Dwayne Wright, just recently. My thinking, first of all, I'm open since it's public safety is important to me. Not only that, I was car checked recently in Seward. in my own car. I have experience of being a victim. We have seen and worked hard to stop police brutality in the communities like Cedar Riverside where we live. We used to have police officers that come in and take innocent kids in their car who has done nothing wrong and take them an alley in the north side and beat the hell out of them and leave them there bleeding. We have held so many events engaged in the police department. We even tried our best to change the police department by forcing them to hire Somali and Oromo speaking, which was actually successful. And now we have about 20 or 30, close to 30 East African background police officers in the metro area. Not what we have done has not changed or reformed the police department. But for me, what I believe is we need to invest social workers, mental health workers. We need to stop sending armed police officers to a mother who is crying for help because her son is having episodes of mental health issue and ending up being shot instead of being helped. We need to send social workers to things like that. We need to hire mental health workers. So
you believe in divesting from police and investing?
I don't believe at this time we have researched enough and a plan where we can say tomorrow or when I'm elected, we're going to destroy the whole department. No, we have seen what happened and how the public safety was endangered in
the vacuum
city.
That's left with that.
We want, though, I will invest in social workers instead of more police. Social workers, mental health workers, until we find an alternative sound enough from the community that we all agree, a plan that has been well researched scientifically that says, well, we have this system. In the next 5 years, we can gradually be without police officers. If that is what the people want and that's what's feasible in the future, is something I'm open to it. But right now, disband, demolish, let's have chaos. I'm not into that. I'm not into hiring more police officers. I want us to invest in social workers as soon as possible.
That's kind of what I meant, because obviously
Yes.
our local governments and our federal governments invest a lot of money, a lot of public money into police.
Yes.
Saying they have all kinds of programs to reform police.
Yes.
But what you suggest isn't necessarily that. It is using those funds to invest in other means of...
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. What's so more scary? I'm a father of 2 daughters here. And imagine a mom or a dad calls for help, whether it's a family domestic, whether it's a mental health issue, whether it's any issue that we need help. And the police shows up expecting, you call 911, and you end up your son or your daughter dead or harmed, or you're crying over their dead body. That is a very bad scenario, and we don't have to get used to it. It scares the hell out of us. We need social workers. We need intervention. We need workers. We need mental health workers that are trained, part of the city budget, that deal with those issues. Let the armed police deal with robberies, deal, armed, dangerous things. And the other thing, our police force doesn't look like police force anymore. It looks like military.
It's military.
It's militarized. We don't need that. The other thing I want to change the police department is, how can in the world we have young people coming from small towns, Minnesota, young people who are eager to serve and protect, but has never worked with people of color, has never worked in an urban setting. If you look at that mindset, that person who's driving 40 or 2 hours to come to work to police us is actually coming to war zone in their minds. We need police officers who live in the city.
So they respond accordingly.
Yes, I would feel very happy when you are a police officer who live across the hall to me, or across in Phillips, or in Seward, or in Cedar Riverside. You will be doing your job perfectly. That's community policing, because you know your neighborhood. You know your neighbors. When we had Somali officers serving in Cedar Riverside doing the beat, our crime went down 70%. You know why? They are from there, so they know almost every family. So they know the kid that does something wrong, what apartment and what building they live. That's what I call policing. So my plan is that we will reduce 50% of new hires coming from. We want them to be coming from the communities they're serving in the city.
Thank you so much for that. Just to kind of cap this off, if you could kind of tell our audiences, our viewers, top 3 or your key policy positions that you will be running on in this upcoming
election. I want to tell you, opioid crisis, though we are not proud as a community, we don't like that because we know the shaming that comes with it. Opioid crisis, drug addiction, fentanyl, very dangerous drugs, synthetic drugs from China are really very cheap. Cheap cocaine and all kind of dangerous drugs, our prescription drugs, are really killing our children. The families are afraid. A lot of families are afraid because of the shaming that happens not to the kids, but to the parents of being bad parents. I want to build a system that helps our community, gives them a confidence by working with the imams, the church leaders, and faith communities, and the business people to really encourage those suffering families in silence, alone, to come out and have a support groups in our community centers, and also invest in programs that help prevent drug addiction in our community, especially what's happening. I live in Cedar Riverside. Believe me, there is no day and night I don't run young kids from different neighborhoods, Somali, East African, doing drugs, doing fentanyl in the stairways. It's very well known. The problem is big. Second thing, housing. We are seeing a housing crisis, and the rent seems to be going up. And in this pandemic, the unemployment is high, and the income we earn is very small. It's not compatible with the rent. Our families are big. They are not nuclear families. A lot of family members of Ward 6. They are bigger families. So we would like to build or incentivize new housing, not affordable. I would like to see most of them low income. There's a catchword. You will see beautiful building that says affordable, but to whom it's affordable?
Is it affordable?
Maybe someone who makes the cap income might be 60,000, 70,000, or 100,000. We want to know if affordable, what kind of affordable, and to whom it is affordable. Housing is a priority. We see the homeless shelters, the homeless camps you see, 40% of them had jobs or still do have a part-time jobs. It's not lazy people. It's people who cannot afford this rent that's becoming out of control. So we also believe a reasonable rent control. The other priority I have is public safety. How can we be safe from lack of safety? At the same time, from our own law enforcement, how can we have law enforcement that not only protects us, but also we are safe from the brutality? That's the biggest conversation in our city right now. I believe there's no rush, there's no magic word, but what I know right now is that we don't need to increase police force. We need to gradually move on to delegate everything we threw at the police force, everything on 911. We should have other departments that really work with other departments.
That can adequately respond.
Respond the appropriate responses. The third thing fourth thing that's really I've been working on and I'm passionate about is jobs. Everything is about jobs. We have the lowest annual income of all wards in Ward 6. We also have our big share of unemployment. And if you look at the investment that every city council is fighting for his ward or her ward, is almost nil to what we have our city council fighting for us in the ward. I would love to work all the 9 precincts, all the 6 neighborhoods to actually work together and listen to those leaders and residents and see what is the appropriate investments we need. Jobs are very important. I would love to invest organizations that I've worked with and many other organizations that primarily reach out to our communities in Ward 6 to create jobs. Jobs, I don't mean, come work in this hotel and you don't have a health insurance, you have no union rights, you are not in organized union. We want to create union jobs. We want to create skills like construction, certified jobs that help our communities move on to owning wealth. Most of us are renters like me.
Yeah.
We want to look in the future. The American wealth is owning a home. So we want to create programs at the city level that makes for people like us accessible to that wealth of owning their American dream, that home.
Thank you so
Those are only few because I know your time.
Yeah.
I can go on
I just
forever.
wanted you to cap. I know you could go more in depth on that. I just wanted you to cap, what are your concrete policy positions, and those are all incredibly pertinent and incredibly important to your constituents.
Thank you.
So I really appreciate you going into that. As we were discussing earlier, I'm obviously, as I've told you, I'm very impressed by Somali political organizing, and most of our audience now are Oromos. So I wanted to ask you, what I always ask this, what can the Oromo community do to really be politically relevant and politically be seen? Because as you know, politicians, they go to people, they ask for their votes. They don't really talk to these communities or ask these communities what their concerns are. And once they go into office, they don't really champion those causes.
Yes.
So what can the Oromo community do to be politically relevant, and especially in organizing? And also it's a significant percent of your constituents are Oromos as well. What are you willing to do for the Oromos, and how can they get in touch with you? And will you be talking to more mosques, churches, and other Oromo communities that exist around the word?
First of all, I want to say I have been part of the Oromo Somali East African community quarter century that I worked with. As you know, Brian Coyle Community Center, where is the epicenter of our work, and also see the Riverside Opportunity Center, you'll find Oromo and Somali always working, providing, because that's what the community of that area is. So I'm part of the community already. One thing that I want to tell the Oromo community, that every community sees usually their shortcomings, but they don't see their greatness, but others can see. One thing I see about the Oromo community is their family structure. If you see a lot of East African young people who are troubled, you don't usually find Oromo kids there. So I'm really impressed, and I want to tell the Oromo community their family structure is amazing, and the way they watch out for the youth. The other thing I want to tell the Oromo community is that you don't find in the Somali community is almost every Oromo community member speaks Somali, Oromo, Amharic, and maybe fourth language. Languages are very important. That's very impressive. The thing about political organizing, or any organizing, really needs selflessness. It needs sacrifice. A lot of people in my community, when I started to fight as an organizer, by the way, I got the first people to vote for an office, to really go to a ball and vote, were 56 people in 1996 that I organized. And there was a non-Somali or Oromo
participation,
candidates, Oromo and Somali candidates, way back then. So it grew. It grew. We never get paid. We actually would go to halal store or neighbors to give us some money for gas or to rent us for this hall. We would organize. So, and a lot of people would say, oh, the crazy guy or the crazy people. What do they get out of this? So there must be a sense of selflessness that even Oromo people will call you names. but they will actually appreciate you maybe 20 years later or 5 years later. But there must be people that you as an organizer don't give up and organize and encourage and build on the future, and also get those eighth graders to come with you if you're an organizer. Get your kids to door knock with you. So that influence of really having dedicated organizers that
Builds a certain political culture that I
certain
think I
political
see.
culture.
Yeah.
Then we reached a point where we said, well, we vote for John all the time. What about Ilhan?
Yeah.
What about Muhammad? What about Mahmoud? What about Hussein? So you build, but it doesn't build overnight. It takes certain things. And along the way,
Persistence.
yes,
is the key.
your own community will sometimes, or most of the time, members of your community will discourage you. Will say, "Oh, look, you helped this guy to get this shop, halal shop, and he's rich. You're still poor." But you have to have a passion, whether you're going to be poor or not. So I encourage the Oromo community to use. And the other thing I want to tell the Oromo community, the way they are organized. Really, one organization, one board. That is amazing. We're still struggling with that. But what I would like to tell you is passion is very important. And we would like Oromo community running for mayor. We would like to see Oromo ladies and young men being supported by all of us running for city council or running for an office or for Congress. The other thing I want to share with the Oromo community is that I don't usually, unless I'm asked, I don't feel that you're Oromo or Somali because we all look alike. We all mostly believe in the same thing. We all speak the same languages, and we all live together and eat together. So one thing I don't see, and I have said this at rallies, Oromo rallies, is we have to really work on the side of bringing our communities together. Politically, we are at some stage, but also economically, and also in terms of activity. Oromo community are different than the Somali community in terms of culture. They're big. Oromo is the biggest ethnic group in East Africa.
Yeah.
Not only Ethiopia, but East Africa. So there are different cultures themselves. They have different dances, different poetry.
There's a lot of
different diversity. In Somali community, that's not true.
Yeah.
Very monolithic, it's just a one.
Probably
So I think there are so much that the Oromo community not only teach other East Africans like Somalis or Eritreans or Amhara or Kenyans, but Minnesotans. That beautiful culture and diversity is needed here, and that's what makes it less cold and less snowy in Minnesota. So I think the Oromo community has so much to teach us here. You already taught us a lot about what's happening in Ethiopia, and that's successful. But what we would love you to do is to teach us more and take more of a leadership.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So what would you say to an Oromo, say, a young person currently in high school or in college that's, planning on running? What kind of steps should they take? I know your political journey and organizing journey has been very long.
Yeah.
And you've been mostly devoted to organizing as opposed to running for office. But for someone who studies politics and I want to be a policymaker, what do you say?
First of all, get involved in the local level. Volunteer in your neighborhood organization. Run for a board in Seward, in Cedar Riverside, in West Bank, in Elliott, in whatever neighborhood. I know this communication is around the world. So no matter where you live in a democratic society like this, get involved at the local level. Work with the unions. They have a lot of apprenticeship programs. There are also every university or high school run for office, student body, run for president, run for treasurer. Get involved in every level of government. If there are internships at the local state, elected officials, they give away internships for the summer or for other programs. City council also, they have internships. Ilhan Omar and the Congress level, they have internships. Apply for those. Work with diverse communities. Learn what the issues are. One thing I would like to tell you is listen to people. You're going to hear a lot of things you don't like. That comes with the work. Don't burn yourself. Don't burn yourself. Know your time. Know what free time you have to really engage the community. You grow with that, and many people we have seen did that. They have grown with the process, and now they are in office. Whether it's Ilhan Omar, whether it's other people in office. So I would suggest, if you're eighth grader, if you're in high school, start at the school level. Come to the neighborhood. Volunteer at your community center. Right now, COVID-19, right now, all this, so many help are needed. So please volunteer with your community. Just talk to the elders. Learn your language too. I know most of you Oromo Somali, you lost your Somali, you're Afan Oromo. So please reconnect with your culture. You have such a beautiful culture. Be proud of it and help your elders. There are a lot of programs that really recruiting young people to work with that. We have seen difference in those who get engaged early age or after school programs and those who don't. We have seen a huge gap between their success and failure. So please be engaged.
Thank you so much. That was a really profound message, and I think we all benefit from it.
Yep.
Thank you. So now we've come to the end of our interview, but this is a time where you're running for office. Lots of your constituents will be watching this. Why should they vote for you? This is your time to make the case.
Thank you for asking me. That's very important. And yes, I would like you to vote for me. Number one, I have done the work and I'm passionate. I've been working with the community, providing services, social services, job trainings, you name it, bringing legal access to the community, legal clinics, volunteering in every aspect, including when it's hard time and it's at 3 in the morning and there's a looting and fear happening in the city. I'm on the street, staying up with the neighbors till the morning. Last time on Cedar Avenue, I filmed and followed someone who's breaking, two people who are breaking in our tobacco store owned by Oromo community on Cedar Avenue. And it's on the record. Not only that, I just stood up for Seward and what's happening to our businesses. So I'm a person who are part of the community for over 2 decades. I'm not a person who just showed up to get an address and then disappear when elected. The reason I this time want to run for office is one thing, to take that experience and voice to City Hall, a voice that has never been heard, the community voice. I'm not going to City Hall to work for corporations or to help other big businesses. I want to be there so you can have a voice, get the jobs you need, get the investments you need, get the programs you need. Create after-school program is one of my passion. When our schools are open, I want those kids, when they come out, I want them in their neighborhood, on the Ward 6, wherever they live, that community center, to have money and resources for the young, so the young people don't go to the street. I bring last 3, not this year, but 3 years, I established a program called Free Bikes. One day, I was having my bike out in 2017 or 16. Young kids were fighting over to take it. I learned young kids don't have bikes. I put on social media. I got one bike from here. Then Alina Health stepped in and gave me 100 bikes first year and belts. Next year, we did 268. Wow. The other year, we did 380 something. And then our friends in this neighborhood, here, Mill City, stepped in to bring 100 locks for the kids. So we're bringing that back. So I'm really part of the community, knowing what the children need, knowing what they need. My kids, one 19, going 19 in May, one going to 15 in January, they were born in the community. Those who run for office, sometimes, they come from affluent families. They even afraid to campaign in my community late at night. I lived there for 2 decades and I'm part of the community. And if you want your voice, which I'm sure you wanted, I would guarantee you your voice will be heard in City Council.
Thank you so much. That was a really compelling argument that you made. I'm sure our viewers will heed that. If they want to contact you, say youth want to door knock for you or be a part of your campaign, how can they contact you?
Call my cell phone number. Get in touch with me directly to help us really door knock, get the message out, have our voices for the first time, real voices from Ward 6, from our communities to be heard and addressed in City Council. Here's our contacts. And on top of that, if you're still running for a campaign, doesn't mean we're not doing the work. If you need a job, if you need help getting into training in CDL or other apprentice or other trainings for free, please also contact us. If you need a legal help, if you need an interpreter in terms of Somali or you speak Somali or Oromo, we'll put you in the right community center or the private call center or where the resources are. So we're not only running for office, we are not going to stop our work to work for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdirizak Bihi, for coming in and for sitting down with me. We really appreciate it, and come back again. We always say that our doors are open to you. And
thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. And I just want to tell you, I'm surprised. I didn't know the studio, how big it is. So I'm glad, and I will definitely be back.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you for tuning into our special segment. Our segment concludes here. If you're interested in joining Abdirizak Bihi's campaign, please follow the information below. Until next time.